Okay. Okay. So I wanted to say this, right? So start fresh. Start fresh in the sense, okay? So far, whatever you have learned, right? So that is all the fundamentals. This is something I've already told you earlier as well. Okay. All the admin part and everything. So that, so you can consider it like the foundation for you. Okay. So so all of you guys are preparing yourself for developer role. Okay. So if you're preparing yourself for an admin role, then that's fine, right? So you can go deep in whatever concepts that you have learned so far, right? So in the part, like as a part of so admin. Okay. So but here we are preparing ourselves for development. So for that reason, whatever you are going to learn from today, so this is what you will do most of the times, right? In your day in, day out, when you start working. Okay. So to whatever extent that you have done so far, right? So please keep all of that aside for a time being. Okay. And start focusing on whatever that we are discussing from today onwards. Okay. So if you haven't completed, so any of the previous hands-ons and everything, right? So take some time and so complete it slowly, and you'll definitely be able to so complete it over the period of time, right? If you are doing that for next couple of weeks or something like that, definitely you'll be able to complete whatever that was left, right, so far. But from now onwards, right, so whatever we are learning, so try to complete these things then and there itself. Okay. So this is something I want to tell you. Okay. So I'm not saying that whatever you have learned, that will not make any sense or something like that. So that is a foundation. So we'll do everything on top of that only, right? So if you don't know how Salesforce platform works, right? So even though you know coding, that will not make any sense. But I believe, right, you were able to understand the Salesforce platform to a considerable so amount, or so to a certain extent. So that is enough for for now. But I'm not asking you to not complete the previous hands-on exercises, or not to so complete the badges and all of that, right? So you have to complete them, but focus on whatever we are learning from today onwards, right? So focus more on the development, and whenever you are getting some free time, so complete the previous things that whatever left. Okay. Is it clear, guys? So now let me quickly share my screen, right? So let me just simply go to my org, right? So now currently I am in my org. So let me open our developer console. Okay. So all of your question is, right? So where, so all of this code will go and save. That is what your question is, right? So where does this code store? Whatever we are writing in our anonymous window. So where does it go and save in the backend, right? So as I told you earlier, so this is not going to be saved anywhere within our Salesforce. Okay, whatever you are running through our anonymous window, so it is like so just one time execution. That's it. Okay, so once this is executed, Salesforce will just simply delete that. Okay. So but what generally happens is, right, whatever you have executed recently, right, so the last recent one, right, so that code you'll be able to see that in the anonymous window whenever you are opening it. Okay. That's it. So apart from that, so whatever executions that you have done so far, you'll not be able to see it. Okay. So if you look at this, right, so what happened here, so yesterday, this is the code that I have executed for the last time. That is the reason why I'm seeing this. Okay. Now let me just simply remove this. I have removed everything. Okay. So, and let me just simply so print hello world. Okay. Something like this, and execute this. So what will happen, right? So this is coming up, right? This log is coming up. If I go to debug only, right? So I'll be able to see hello world. Okay. So that is fine. So now, right? So if I open my anonymous window, right? So what is that I'm seeing, right? I'm seeing nothing, right? Earlier there was a lot of code, but this is the one that I've executed for the last time. So for that reason, right? So whatever we have executed for the last time, only that thing we'll see. Okay. So that for that reason, I'm only able to see this hello world thing. Okay. But let me bring back whatever, so that was there earlier, right? So I have brought back everything. So this is what it is. right? So if I want this to be stored, right, so within this execution window for a long time, right, for a longer period of time, so then what should I do? So there is one simple trick that we can do, which is commenting all of this code. Okay, so if I'm commenting all of this code, what will happen, right? So even though I click on execute, so right, so nothing will get executed. Why? Because all of this code was in comments, right? So if I'm working on some new exercise or something like that, I can just simply write all of that instructions or program or whatever it could be, and then I can click on execute. Then what will happen, right? So along with the new lines of execution that we have added, right, so all the previous code that was written in the comments also will be displayed here, right? If I'm opening my anonymous window next time. Okay, so this is one of the tricks that you can play with, right? So to whatever extent that so it is helpful for you, you can just simply play with it. Otherwise, right, so what I would recommend is, right, so whatever hands-on exercises that are given for you, right, so where is your program, right? So this is your program. Okay, so whatever hands-on exercises that are given to you, right, so what I would recommend you guys to do is just simply once that is executed successfully, once whatever code that you have written, right, if that code is executed successfully, then take that piece of code and store it somewhere in the text file, to store it somewhere in the notepad or whatever it could be, right? So store it as text files somewhere in any of the folders, right, that is saved on your desktop or something like that, so that if you want to refer back to them, so that you can refer back. So now let's go to the next topic, right? So let's see what all things we have learned so far, right? So we are in the first part of our Salesforce development, which is Apex fundamentals. In this Apex fundamentals, what all things we have seen so far, right? So within this Apex fundamentals, right, the first part is programming basics. Okay, so now yesterday we have seen what is programming, right? So how a computer runs, right? What is a program and all of that we have seen. And after that, right, so we have started looking at the programming building blocks, right? So within this programming building blocks, right, so what we have seen yesterday, we have seen what are variables and what are constants and what are data types, right? So these are the things that we have seen yesterday, right? So before we go to the next topic, so let me do one thing, right? So let me just simply reiterate what we have so discussed in our yesterday's class at a higher level. Okay, right? So now, right, so what is a variable, guys? Can someone tell me what is a variable? Can anyone tell me what is a variable? Come on, guys, speak out.
Variable is a location capable of storing temporary data.
Yes, temporary data, right? So within our
the
program, within our program,
this data can be modified or
that
stored.
data, yes, right. So that data can be modified, so yeah, so or store whatever you want to do it, right? So right, so that is what a variable is all about, right? So if you are declaring, right, something as a variable, right? So a as a variable or something like that. So what will happen? What will happen? Tell me. What all things we can do? Okay, so this is what it is, right? So if a is a variable, so then what can be done, right? So we have to declare that with the help of data type, right? If that is an integer, we have to declare the data type, right? So the name of the variable, right? So and then what's next? Optionally what you can do, right? You can assign some value to it, right? So optionally you can assign some value to it, and right, so later stages, right? So if you want to modify that, you can modify it, right? So if you want to display that whenever needed, you can display that as well. So this is what a variable is all about. Okay, so how to declare a variable, right? So if you want to declare a variable, right, you have to give the data type of it and the name of the variable, and then optionally you can set the value into it, right? So but this is not mandatory, right? So you can set it up if you want, otherwise you can just simply leave it. But as a best practice, what I've told you, right? So if it is an integer, always initiate it with 0. Okay, if it is a string, always initiate it with empty string. Okay, so why we have to do that? Why have I asked you to do that? Why we should be doing that? Tell me, guys. Why we should be initiating with it a 0 or maybe some empty string. Why should we doing that?
Value అనేది execute అవ్వదు.
Yes, right. So if we are not assigning any values to the variables, right? If there is no value, and if you are using that variable somewhere within your program, and if you are so doing some kind of operations or complex so calculations, then what will happen, right? So those calculations will fail. Why? Because there is no value in it, right? You are trying to reference a null value. Null means what? There is no value associated to it. That is what null is all about. Okay. So empty means what? Empty means it's empty, right? Empty is a value. Okay. But null is a no value. Yeah. So null means no value. Empty means empty. That's it. Okay. So that is what it is, right? This is what we have discussed in our yesterday's class. And so how many data types we have? How many data types we have? Data types also we have discussed. Okay. How many data types we have? Right. So we have 5 types of data types. Okay. Majorly. Right. So they are primitive data types. Right. So all the data types that we have in Salesforce are built on top of primitive data types, right? So primitive data types are the regular data types that you'll see in any of the programming language. But apart from primitive data types, Salesforce has built some other type of data types for us, so that so we don't need to do everything on our own. Okay. So to make our work easy, Salesforce has built some other data types as well. So those data types are like S objects, collections, enums, classes, objects, and interfaces. Okay. So these things, right? So we can discuss at the later stages, right? So right. So while learning the coding and all of that. So but right. So what we have learned yesterday is it is all about primitive data types, right? So what all primitive data types that we have? Tell me. Can someone tell me what all primitive data types that we have?
Is date,
Right. So tell me.
integer
which stores number value, long which stores longer numbers, right? Bigger numbers, decimal which stores decimal values, double which stores longer decimal values, right? So bigger decimal values, date, right? So that stores date type of data, time that stores time type of data, right? So date time stores both date and time, whereas string stores string type of data, id stores IDs, right? So record IDs and all of that. So Boolean stores either true or false, right? So these are the things that we have discussed in our yesterday's class. This stores number, big number. This stores decimal values. Okay. So this stores big decimals. Okay. So this stores date data. This stores time data. This stores both date and time data, right? So this stores string data, right? So this is what we have discussed yesterday, right? So if you are declaring anything as a string, right, so how Apex identifies something as a string, right? So if you are keeping that in the single quotes, right? So then what will happen, right? So it will consider that as a string. Okay. So otherwise it will not consider it as a string. Okay. So that's what it is, right? So please make sure that you are always, so keeping strings, right? So between single quotes in Apex programming language, right? So otherwise it will not be considered as string, right? So otherwise it will be considered as some other variable or whatever it could be. Okay. So this is what, right, we have seen yesterday. Okay. So now let's so look at right, so statements and expressions. Okay. So what is a statement and what is an expression, right? So now let's look at this, right? So what is a program, guys? Program is a set of instructions that are given to a computer to perform some kind of task, right? So that is what so program is all about, right? So now we have the set of instructions, right? So now we have, say for example, this is the program, right? So now within this program, right, so we have given multiple instructions, right? So instruction 1, right? So instruction 2, right? So instruction 3, something like this. Okay. So we have given multiple instructions, right? So now what, right? So your computer will do, right? So it will execute. So while you are executing this program, so it will, so execute each and every instructions, right? So it will perform whatever task that you have given in each and every instruction, right? So one after the other, right? So at any point in time, if that fails, right, so it will just simply throw an error, right? So it will tell you, right, what went wrong and all of that, right? So that is what the program is all about, right? So now what is statement, right? So statement is nothing but, right, so the instruction that whatever we are giving, right, each and every instruction, right, so that we give within our program, right, those instructions we call it as statements. Okay, so those instructions, what do we call, right? So we call them as statements, right? So all of these are building blocks of a program, right? So we have to know all of that, right? So a statement is a line of code or a block of code, okay, that you design to carry out a task or an action, right? So task or an action means what, right? So that is what the purpose of an instruction, right? When you are sending an instruction, that means you are asking it to do something. Okay, so that means that is what it is, right? So a statement is a line of code. It can be a single line or a block of code. Block means, right, so a block of code, right? So multiple lines of code or a single line of code, right? So it can be anything, right? So but what that is going, what that should be doing, right? It should so carry out a task or an action, right? It has to do something, right? So that we call it as a statement. Okay, so that we call it as a statement. So now, right, so let's look at one simple example. Okay, right, so here if you see something, right, so so there is a variable named is my love real. Okay, is my love real. Okay, so what value we are going to store in it, right? So we want to store either true or false, right? So whether my love is true or false, right? That value, that value we want to store in this variable. Okay, since that is true or false, right? What kind of data it is, right? So that is a Boolean data, right? For that reason I have given Boolean as the data type, and is my love so real as a variable name, and this and this and this. One second, someone is speaking, right? So guys, do you have any questions? Nagraj, you're asking something, buddy? Okay, right, good. So right, so this is what it is. Okay, so now what is this, right? So this is also a statement. Okay, right, this is also a statement. So what we are doing in this statement, right? So what we are doing within this expression, okay, not expression, within this instruction. Okay, so what we are doing this, right? So we are storing some value, right? So we are asking our computer to store this value, true value, into this is my love real variable, right? So that means it's a statement. Okay, so the same way, right, if you look at this, but this is a what? This is a single line statement. Okay, single line statement or single line instruction. Okay, single line statement or instruction, whatever it is, right? So that is what the statement is all about, right? So we are asking the computer to do something. What we are asking here, right? So we are asking computer to store, right? So is my love I'm like, so we are asking our computer to store, right, true value into is my love real variable. That is what this instruction is all about. Okay, so the same way, right, what I've told you, it can be a single line of code or a block of code, right? So after that, what I'm doing, right? So if my love is real, then print, right, so system.debug, right, so his love is real. This is what I'm asking my computer to do, right? In this block of code, what I'm doing, right? So I'm asking I'm asking the computer to check, right? So is my love real or not? If my love is real, then print his love is real. Okay, then print his love is real, right? So this is what, right, this is a block of code. But again, this is also a statement, right? So statement in the sense, this is also an instruction, okay, that we are asking our computer to perform. Okay, so that's what this particular thing is all about. Okay, so every statement, right, if you look at this statement, right, how this statement is ending, right? So every statement ends with either a semicolon, right? So here, can you see this, right? So it ended with a semicolon, right? So even if you look at what you have done in our yesterday's class, what we have done, right? So we have so ended each and every statement with a semicolon, right? So a is equals to 5. That means what? Integer a is equals to 5. That means what, right? So we are storing 5 value into this a variable, right? So which is of type integer. Okay, so that is what we are asking our computer to do, right? So and So this instruction is already done, right? Since this instruction is done, so we are ending that with a semicolon, right? So that's why we are using semicolons at the end of each and every line, right? So that, right, based on that, computer will get to know, okay, so this is the instruction that I have to complete, right? So it will complete that instruction, then it will go to the next one, right? So it will complete the next instruction, then it will go to the next one, it will complete the next instruction. Okay, so either that instruction can be of single line, right, so which is ending with a semicolon, or it can be of, right, a block of code, right, so which is between two braces. Okay, if you look at this, right, what happened, right? If is my love real, right, so do all of this, that is what we have done, right? So what all things we have kept, right? So within this curly braces, right, so we have kept system.debug his love is real, but you can add any number of lines of code that you want to add, but again, right, so all of that will be considered as one block of code. Okay, so within this block you can have any number of statements if you want. Okay, so this can be a bigger statement. Within that bigger statement, if you want to add some smaller multiple statements, you can do that as well. Okay, either it ends with a semicolon or written in a block of block, right? So block which is considered as, which should be between curly braces. So then what is an expression? Okay, so an expression is a statement that evaluates to a single value, right? So expression is a statement. What is it, right? So but that statement will always evaluate to a single value in the sense, right? So it will return you something. Okay, so if your statement is returning something, right, so returning some value, right, so then that statement can be considered as expression. Okay, so the statements, either they can return something or they can just simply execute something. Okay, statement can be of anything, but if your statement is returning something, right, so then we'll just simply consider it as an expression. Okay, so now let's just simply look at so a simple expression example here. Okay, so now let me show you. Okay, so just quickly see this, right? So what do we have here, right? So we have one variable named amount, and within the so into that variable, what we are storing 3 plus 5, right? So what value, right, so that we are getting out of it, right? So this statement, so what is the value that this statement is returning to us? So it is giving us 8, right? So that is what it is, right? So an expression is a statement that evaluates to a single value. Here we are getting some value out of it, isn't it so, right? So amount equals to 3 plus 5 means, so it is giving us some output as 8. Okay, so now let's look at this, right? So now what we are doing, right, so this is also a statement. Okay, so but this is also evaluating to a single value, amount less than 10. Is that true or false, right? So what is that we have in amount, right? So 8 we have in that, 8 is the value that we are having in our amount, but here is 8 less than 10, is 8 less than 10, true, right? So what would be the value that we are getting out of it, right? So true is the value that we are getting out of it, right? So now A is equals to 5. So that means what's happening, right? So in this A, right, so we are having some value which is 5. That means it is also returning some value, right? So B is equals to 23. So what is this, right? So this is also returning some value which is 23. So C is equals to A plus B, right? So now what will happen, right? So 5 plus 23, which is equals to 28. So it is also returning some value, right? So what is an expression? An expression is a statement that evaluates to a single value. If you look at this, right, all these are statements, but they are evaluating to some value. They are returning some value as an output. Okay, so 8, true, 5, 23, 28, and all of that, right? So that's what the expression is all about, right? So now let's quickly look at the previous one. Okay, so previous example, right? So now let me just simply clear all of this, right? So let's look at the previous example, right? So in this previous example, right, so this is an expression. Okay, why? Because it is evaluating to a single value, right? So Boolean is my love real equals to true. That means what is it, right? So is my love real, right? So in is my love real, so we are having a value, right? So that is coming coming as true. Okay, so that means this is an expression. But what about this one? Okay, so what about this block of code? Can you just simply look at this? What about this block of code, right? This block of code is not returning anything. Okay, so it is just simply executing something. What is that it is executing? What is that it is executing? It is just simply, right, checking this, and if that is true, then it is just simply printing out some value, right? So that printing out some value is a part of execution, but this is not, right? So evaluating to a single value, right? So that's why this is not an expression, but this is an expression. Okay, but both of them are statements. Okay, this is also a statement and this is also a statement. But if your statement, right, so this is not an expression. If your statement is evaluating to a single value, then that will be considered as an expression. And if your statement is, right, not evaluating to a single value, then it will not be considered as an expression, but it will be considered as a statement, right? What a statement, and this is what an expression. So all of these are building blocks, right? So all of these are building blocks of any programming language, not just Apex, right? So even if you learn C, so statement means this is what, so whatever we have just seen, right? That's what, so we call a statement in C, right? So that's what we call a statement in Apex. That's what we call a statement in Java, right? So whatever we have seen it as an expression, so that is what we call it as an expression in JavaScript, right? Apex and everything. So it is common across all the programming languages. Okay, so now we know, right, what is a statement and what is an expression, right? So then what is the next building block that we need to know about, right? So in what right, so in programming, which is operators, right? So what are operators, right? So we have majorly 5 types of operators. Okay, so what is an operator, right? So generally in an operator is a simple sign. Okay, so or so a simple you can just simply call it as a sign. Okay, so any sign so that performs, okay, so that performs some operation, okay, some operation, right, and gives you some output as a return. Okay, output as a return, so that we call it as a operator, right? So what I mean, like, so what it will do, right? It will perform some operation. I mean, like, so what kind of operation it will perform on what it will perform an operation, right? That is also something we should know, right? So say for example, if you have multiple variables, right? So A, B, something like that. So they can be of integer, they can be of, right, string or anything, right? So right, so it will take few of the variables and it will, I'm like, if so what operators will do, right? So now operators will take some of the variables and they will, I mean, like, so they will perform some kind of operation on those variables and it will return some output. Okay, so once that operation is performed, right, so it will return some output, right? So that's what operators generally do. Okay, so now let's see what kind of operators that we have, right? So we have 5 types of operators, as I said, right? The first one is assignment operator, right? So what this assignment operator generally does. Okay, so now just simply look at this, right? So we have already seen assignment operators and we are already doing assignment, so I'm like from the first topic itself, but we are not doing it consciously. Okay, but now let's quickly look into this. A is equals to 25, right? So what is that? So this equals to means, right? So this equals to is an assignment operator. Okay, so what is this? This equals to is an assignment operator. So what does this equals to generally do, right? So, right, so whatever that is there towards the right side of the equals to symbol, right, it is taking that value, right, and it is assigning that value to the one that is there on the left side of that assignment operator, right? So what is that we have, right? So we have integer a, right? This a is a variable, right? So what we are doing, right? So we are assigning a value, right? So this we call it as a value, right? So we are assigning a value of 25 to the integer variable a, right? So this is what this equals to symbol generally do, right? This is what this assignment operator generally does, right? So whatever that is there on the right side of that assignment operator, it will just simply take that and so assign it to the one that is there it on the right side, right? So now what will happen, right? So if you try to print this a, then what will you get, right? So you will get the output as 25. Okay, why you will get the output as 25 is because so this value has been assigned to this variable, right? So that's what this assignment operator is all about. Okay, so right, either you can see reassignment is also possible. Now what happened, right? So now the value that we have in a is 25, right? So now let's say, for example, so I have some another variable, right? So which is called as B, right? So, and in B, I am storing some value like 3 or something like that. So now, right? So what can I do is, right? So I can reassign as well, right? So reassignment in the sense, right? So into A, if I am bringing B, then what will happen, right? So now the value of A will be overridden, right? So with value that is there in B. Okay. So now here what happened, right? So this is the first line, right? So this assignment happened, right? And after that, in the second line, we have printed whatever value that is there in the A, right? So, and after that, what we have done, right? While printing it, it has printed 25. That means the value that we have in our A currently is 25, right? So, and after that, what we have done, right? So we have declared one more variable, right? So named B, and we are assigning some value like 3 into that variable B, right? So now the value that is there in B is 3. Now what I am doing, right? I am reassigning A with some other value, right? So what I'm doing, right? I'm assigning, right? So B to A. That means what will happen, right? So whatever value that is there in B, so that value will come into A, right? So whatever that is there on the right side of this assignment operator, that will directly come into the, so the one that is there towards the variable that is there towards the left side of that assignment operator. Okay. So here, right, they can, whatever that you are adding here, right, they can be direct, so values, or through variables also you can assign some values. Okay. So but what happened here, right? So in B, I am storing value as 3, and here what I'm doing, right, I am not adding 3 as a value into A, right? I am directly assigning the variable itself, the variable B itself, to the A. So now what's happened, right? So the value that is there in B will come into the right, A, right? So will come into A. Okay. So that's what assignment operator generally do, right? So it will help you to assign some values into it. Okay. Go to our so anonymous window. All right. So now let's quickly do that, right? So integer A equals to, right? So 25, right? Or maybe, so let's just simply keep it like this. Okay. So now if I'm trying to print, right? So A, what will happen, right? So I'll get nothing here, right? So I'll get nothing. I'm like, I'll get null. Okay. So, and that what will happen, right? So then I can add anything to it, right? So that's what this assignment is all about. Okay. So A is equals to 30. So now what will happen, right? So if I do this, right, if I'm again printing this, right, system.debug A, then what will happen is that, so now the value that I'll be having in my A is 30. Okay. So that's what this assignment is all about. Okay. So now let me do one thing, right? So let me, so create one more integer. Okay. So integer B, right? So, and then let me do B equals to A. So, and then, right, so B equals to A, and then let me print it out, right? So now see what will happen, right? So now, so in B we'll have what? So in B we'll have, sorry. So in B, so we'll have whatever value that is there in A. Okay. So this is, the assignment is all about. Okay. So let me just simply execute this and see what will happen, right? So I'm opening the log directly, right? So now if I click on execute, so it will open the log then and there itself. Okay. So this is what the log is all about. Now let me just simply click on debug only, then I can see all of that, right? So what is the value that we have in, right, in A in the beginning, right? So we have null, right? Why? Because we haven't initialized that particular variable, right? So we haven't assigned anything, right? After that, right? So we have added 30 into it, right? So now the 30 got printed, right? So now we have 30 in A, and after that we have created one more variable B, right? So into that B we have added A. So for that reason, whatever value that is there in B, that value directly got printed up here. Okay. So this is all about assignment. Okay. So now let's go to the next operator, right? So before we are going to the next operator, what I'll do, right? I'll just simply comment all of this code. Okay. All these lines of code, right? So now let me go back, right? So what's next, right? So next we have arithmetic operators, right? So what are these arithmetic operators, right? So arithmetic operators generally perform algebra calculations, right? So in maths, right? So if you do remember about algebra, right? So you have a lot of things, right? So you don't need to worry about all of that, but just simply, so try to remember the basic ones. Okay. So if you have two numbers, okay, if you have two numbers, number 1, right? So, and number 2, okay? So some 5, right? So some 3 or something like that, okay? So if you want to add them, right? So what you'll do, right? So you'll add this plan, you will use this plus symbol, right? So 5 plus 3 equals to what will happen, right? 8. So this is a general mathematics, right? So here, even in our programming also, right, it will follow the same thing, okay? So plus symbol is generally used to, right, so add two variables, okay? So add two variables, right? So two integer variables, okay? So not so all the type of variables, right? So this so plus operator, right, so will have so different significance, right, if you are using with different sort of variables, okay? But when you are using it with integers, right, so when you are using it between integers, so what it will do is it will add both of them and it will give you the final output, right? Say for example, right, so this is something we have just seen, right? So you have a equals to 5, b equals to 3. If you are using this operator, then what will happen is that, right, so a plus, right, so if you are using this operator a plus b, right, so if you are using c equals to a plus b, so then what will happen, right? So this will add both of them, right? So 5 plus 3 and it will give you the output as 8, right? If you're trying to print c system dot debug c, then what will happen, right? So you will get an output as 8, okay? So that is what this plus operator will do, okay? So now let's take I mean, like, so minus, right? So the subtraction operator, right? So say for example, right, I have one more variable, right? So d, okay? So if I'm using that subtraction operator, what will happen, right? So it will just simply, right, so subtract, right, so the value towards the right side, right, from the value that we have on the left side of that what, right? So that operator, okay? So now in a we have 5, right? So in b we have 3. 5 minus 3, what it will be, right? So it will be 2, right? So if you are trying to print d, right, so then the output would be system dot debug, right, d, right? So it will give you the output as 2, okay? So that's what this so minus is all about, right? And then what about multiplication operator, right? So what about this into, right? So a is equals to 5, b is equals to 3, right? So now right, so if you want to store the multiplication of both a and b, right, so this a and this b should be integers, right? So whatever I'm just so explaining here, right, so it works with only integers, right? So if you're having two, I mean, like other type of data types, and if you want to perform some kind of operations, right, so using arithmetic operators, right, so you'll never be able to do that, okay? Why? Because so these arithmetic operators works only on integers, okay? So the plus operator is something that can be used with strings as well. So I'll show you that, right, how this plus operator works with strings. But generally, so most of the times all the arithmetic operators will use only with numbers, okay? So c is equals to 5 into 3. So what will happen, right? So this into will into or whatever it is, right? So that asterisk will multiply both of them and will give you the output, right? 5 into 3, what is it? 15 would be the output, okay? So that's what this so asterisk is all about, right? So and what about this division, okay? So now a is equals to 5, b is equals to 3, okay? So a divided by b, right? So if c is equals to a divided by the b, then what will happen, right? 5 by 3, right? So this is also something we know. So 3 ones, right? So 3 and 5, right? So what will happen, right? So 3 ones are 3 and the remainder is 2, but still, right? So if you ask what I mean, like what is so the output of it, right? So we'll say 1 is the output of it, okay? So or else maybe 1 point some what is it, right? So 3 2 blah 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 and all of this. If that goes it like that, then it will become 5 and the remainder will become 0. But most of the times, right, so right, so we'll not go like that, right? So if c is equals to a by b, right, so if a is equals to 5, right, so b is equals to 3, so then the output would be, right, so 1, okay? So 1 is the output that we get from c, or maybe 1 point blah 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 blah, whatever it is, okay? So that's what, right, so this division is all about, okay? So and then what about this mod? There is one more thing called mod. Mod means reminder, guys, Okay, so A is equals to 5, B is equals to 3 we have, right? So if you are giving, right, so A mod of B or something like that, right? So then what will happen is that, right? So, right, so 5, not 5, right? So what is it? Right? Right. So let's reverse it. Okay, so A is equals to 3, right? So B is equals to 5. Okay, so B is equals to 5. Then what will happen? Right, so A mod B, reverse it. Okay, so whatever it could be, right? So let's just simply leave it like that. Okay, so then what will happen? Right, so 3 here, right? 5 here. So 3 1s are 3, right? So whatever remainder that you are getting it, right? So that is what mod is all about. Okay, what is mod? Mod is nothing but remainder. Okay, so we could have done so what divisions when we are learning mathematics in our childhood, right? So 4th class, 5th class and all of that, right? So these are as simple as that. Okay, so all the arithmetic related operations you can do with the help of arithmetic operators, right? So plus, minus, right? So multiplication, division, and the mod means remainder. Okay, so now let's try to use these arithmetic operators and see what will happen. Okay, so now let's just quickly go back to our developer console and let's do this. Okay, so what is it? Right, so integer A equals to 5. Okay, so integer B equals to 3. Okay, so now arithmetic operation. Okay, if you want to do arithmetic operation, then what can we do? Right, so integer C equals to A plus B. Okay, so now system dot debug, right? So if you are doing C, what will happen? Right, you'll get, what would be the output? Right, so A plus B, right? So the output would be 5, sorry, 8. Okay, so let's execute this. Right, so 8 is the output. Okay, so that's what this arithmetic operator, so that's what this plus operator does. Okay, so and then what's next? Right, so then next goes to sorry, arithmetic operations. Within this arithmetic operation, addition operation, right? So arithmetic operation, right? So addition, right? So let's call it like this. So and then, right? So this is addition, right? So this is addition, right? So and then what do you want to do? You want to do the subtraction. If you want to do subtraction, then what can you do? C equals to A minus B. Okay, so system dot debug. Okay, C. Now let's see what will happen. Right, so now A minus B would be 5 minus 3 is what? 2, right? So now let's see. So what would be the second output? Okay, 2 is the second output. Okay, so now let's come back here, right? So then C equals to, then what can we do, right? So A minus B happened, right? So since this is a variable, right? So we can modify it, right? So whenever we want to modify within our so program, right? So that's what we can do with variables, right? So that's why what happened, right? So while declaring C, what I've done, I've kept A plus B, and after that, right? So this is first 1 2 3 third line. In the third line, that is what I've done. Again, in fifth line, what I've done, I have modified the value that is there in that C. I can do that, right? So that's why we call it as a variable. Variable means whenever we want to change the value that is there within that particular variable, we can change that throughout our program whenever we want to do it. Okay, so that's why we call it as a variable. Okay, right, so that's the so we have done the subtraction as well, right? So addition we have done, right? So subtraction we have done. Okay, so and then, so what's next, right? So let's do the multiplication, right? Multiplication. Okay, so if there are any spelling mistakes, please excuse me. Okay, so A into B, right? So system dot debug, right? C. Right, so now let's execute it. Debug only. So now 5 into 3 is 15. Okay, right, so now let's come back. So let me write all of the other things as well. Okay, so C is equals to A by B. Okay, so and then C is equals to A, right? So for this is the division, right? So division. Okay, so this is division. Let me just print system dot debug, right? So, and then see. Okay, so that is what it is, right? So it will give us the output, right, which is 5 by 3, 1 is the value that we'll get. Okay, so that's what it is. So, and then what's next? I don't think, so we'll get an output, but let's see what we'll get. Okay, so and then what's next? Okay, so modulus, right? So now what is the modulus? I've told you modulus means reminder, right? So reminder, but right, so to get a modulus, right, so what is the operator that we have to use, right? So the modulus operator will work somewhat little different, right, compared to other programming languages, right? So it will work somewhat little different in Apex compared to other programming languages. So if you are working with modulus in other programming languages, you'll just simply use percentage sign. Okay, so a percentage of b, that is what the modulus is all about. But in so in Apex, right, so you cannot directly use that percentage symbol to get the modulus of any two numbers, right? So if you want to get so modulus of two numbers, then what you have to do is, right, you have to use something called math.mod, right? So there is a class named math. Okay, so in that math class there is a method named mod. Okay, so you have to pass two parameters to that, right? These parameters are like a comma b, right? So then what will happen is that, right, so it will take this a parameter and it will divide that with the b parameter. Okay, so not divide, right? It'll do the modulus of it and it'll give you the remainder of it, right? So in our case a is 5, right? So b is what, 3, right? So then what will happen, right? So 5, no, not a is 5, yeah, so 5 of 3 or something like that. So then, right, so whatever output that you get, right, you'll get that output here. Okay, that's what this is, right? What is a class, what is a method, and all of that, you don't need to worry about it. I'll tell you all of that. Okay, but this is what you have to do. That's what we have done yesterday as well, right? So while declaring a date, what we have done, right? So date dot of new instance, this is what we have done, right? So new instance, and within this we have passed all of our date value as a parameter, right? So where date is a class and new instance is a method. Okay, so the same way here, math is a class and mod is a method, right? So if you want to if you want to perform a modulus on any two numbers, right, this is what you have to do. Okay, so math.mod, right? So math.mod, right? So number 1, right, comma number 2. This is what you have to do, right? So then it will so perform that modulus and it will give you the output. Okay, now let's quickly see that, right? So for now, so for that reason, what I have to do, right? So C equals to math dot, right? So mod of, what can we do, right? So a comma b, right? So now let's print that as well. Okay, so system dot debug, right? So what is it, right? So C. So now let's print everything and see what kind of output we'll get. Okay, so let me execute this. If something goes wrong, we'll see that error. Otherwise, you'll get everything, so properly. So what it is saying, at line 64, column 3, unexpected token equals to line 64, right? So line 64, yeah. So what happened, right? So we didn't use semicolon here, right? So since we haven't given semicolon, right? So it's it thrown an error. Okay, so let me execute this and see what will happen. Let me go to debug only. Now let's see what will happen, right? So 8, right? So 3 plus 5, 8, right? So 5 plus 3, 8, 5 minus 3, 2, right? 5 into 3, 15, right? So, and then what we have done, right? So division, right? So a by b, what will happen, right? So 3, 3, 5, 3 ones are 3, right? So 2 is the output, right? So where 1 is the what right, quotient, right? So division, output that we get through division, and 2 is a remainder, right? So the output that we are getting with modulus. Okay, so that's what it is it clear, guys, so far? What all these, so arithmetic operators, or do you have any questions, guys? Is it clear, or do you have any questions so far? Clear. Okay, right, very good. Okay, so and now let's go to the next topic, and that there is something that I've already told you, right? So So this plus is something, I mean, like, so all of these arithmetic operators are used between numbers, but whereas plus is something that we can use with strings as well. Okay, string, data type as well. Okay, string data type as well. But this plus symbol, what does this plus symbol will do is, right, if you are taking two strings, okay, string 1, okay, so and string 2, okay, if you are taking two strings and if you are adding both of those strings, right, if you are using this plus sign, right, and if you're trying to add those both strings, then what will happen is that, so you'll get a new string, right, so which will look like this, right, string 1, string 2. Okay, so this we also call it as concatenation, string concatenation. Concatenation means what we are doing, right, so we are adding two strings, right, so we are just simply bringing up two strings and making it as a single string. That's what the concatenation is all about. So even with strings also it will work, right, so you can do with two strings, right, string plus any other variable also you can add, right, so string plus any variable, right, if you want to add to that string, concatenate to that string, you can do that, right, so right, so then what will happen is that, right, so it will come something like this, string and whatever value that is there in that variable, right, if you are having some 30 or something like that, if that is an integer, then what will happen is that you'll get something out, you'll get some output like this, string 30 and all of it. Okay, so now let's quickly see that, right, so quickly see that, right, so how that plus symbol works, right, so between two strings. Okay, so but before that, what I'll do is, right, so let me just simply, right, so comment all of these lines. Okay, so now string, right, so a equals to, right, so we have to declare it, right, we have to declare the data type when you are creating a variable, right, so string a or string 1, whatever you want to call it, right, so let me call it as string 1. Okay, string 1, right, so let me keep my name into it, right, so string 1 Ishwar, string 2 equals to Ramesh or something like this. Okay, so now if I'm adding string 1 and string 2, okay, so now let me create a string 3. Okay, string 3. Okay, so equals to string 1 plus string 2. Now let's see what will happen. Okay, so both of them will get added and so we'll get a new string as an output. Okay, so now let me try to print this system dot debug, right, so string 3, right, so this is an expression. Okay, why not this is an expression, this is an expression. Okay, why? Because it is returning, I mean, like, it is returning some value, it is evaluating to some value. This is also an expression, right, so this is also some expression, right, so that means this is also a statement, right, so an expression can be a statement, but a statement can or cannot be an expression. Okay, so that is something you guys have to remember. Okay, so this is also an expression, right, so this is also an expression, this is also an expression. Why? Because all of them are evaluating to a single value, but this is not an expression, right, so this is a statement, right, because so this is not evaluating to a single value, this is just simply printing the value, that's it, it is just simply executing something. Okay, so that's what it is, that is something you guys have to keep in mind. Okay, so now let's just simply execute this one. Let's see what will happen. See, Ishwara, Ramesh, both of them got added, clubbed together and formed a new string altogether. Okay, so that's what this that's what this plus symbol does, right? So when you are using it between strings, right, so you can do it like this as well, right? So you can just simply see, we are storing them into variables and then we are just simply adding those variables, right? So string 1 plus string 2. So either you can do it that way or you can just simply do it like this as well, right? So Ishwar is one string. Okay, Ishwara is one string. Since that is a string, it should be between what? Two single quotes. Okay, and then what I can do, right? I can just simply use the plus sign here, and here also I can add Ramesh or whatever it could, right? So this also will give us the same kind of output. Okay, so let me just simply execute this and let me show you debug only. See what happened. Ishwara, Ramesh. Okay, So you can do whatever, I mean, like you can just simply add whatever you want to add here, right? So, or else, right, what I can do is, right, I can just simply, so keep something like this integer, right? So a is equals to, right, some 32 or something like that. Okay. So what I can do is Ishvara is, right? So I'm just simply using one more space here so that, right, so we'll get the right thing. Okay. So what I can do, I can just simply use this plus sign and I can add whatever variable that I want to add here, right? So then what will happen? All of this will come out as a string, right? So now let's see what will happen. Okay. So let me just execute this. See what happened. So Ishvara age is 32, right? So this way you can concatenate strings, right? Concatenate string with any other variables or string with string or whatever you want to do with, right? Do with string, right? So you can do all of that, right? So with the help of plus operator is the thing is all about, right? So then what can we do, right? So let's do something quickly here, right? So what I'll do here is, right? So I'll just simply remove this comment and then what can we do, right? So now we have 5 in A and so 3 in B, right? So now I can just simply write it like this. Okay, adding addition of, okay, addition of, can I do like this, right? So addition of, right? So I'll just simply give some space here. Okay, so addition of, what can we do? Addition of what are the variables that we have? A and B, right? So addition of plus I can add. Okay, so plus A, right? So addition of A, that is what it is, right? So A, okay. So what I'm doing, right? I am adding this addition of string to this variable. Okay, so and after that, what I'm doing, right? So let me do this. Okay, so addition of A, right? So then what happened, right? So I'm giving plus here, right? So A plus, no, or whatever it is, right? So A, right? So and, right? So see, I'm giving some space also here, right? So this whole thing is considered as a string. This space and after that and after that space, the whole thing will be considered as a string, right? So now what we are doing, right? So we are adding this string, right? So addition of the string, whatever value that is there in this A, that value comes up, and after that, right? So again some space, right? I'm adding some space and then, right? So and some space, right? So addition of A, what is that A, right? 5, addition of 5 and you'll come, I mean, like you'll get it like that. Okay, addition of 5 and what is that? What is the next one, right? So 3, right? So 3, for 3, what we can do, right? So we can just simply give it as B, right? So that is what we are having in B, right? So B, right? So I want to add one more string to it, right? So what is the string? Is, okay. So addition of A and B is, what is it? I can just simply give one more plus sign here and I can just simply keep C here, right? So then what will happen, right? So addition of 5 and 3, what is there in B? 3 is, what will happen, right? C means what is it? A plus B, right? So which is 8. So that is what the output that you will get here. Okay, let me just simply execute this piece of code, right? So if you want to execute the whole thing, then you'll just simply click on execute. If you want to execute only some few lines of code, then what you have to do is, right, you have to select all those lines of the code and just simply click on execute highlighted. If you click on that, only those lines of code will be executed. Okay, so let me click on execute highlighted and see what will happen. Okay, only those lines will get executed. Okay, addition of 5 and 3 is 8, right? So this way you'll get the output. Okay, so is it clear, guys? So can we try adding it for so other operators as well, subtraction and everything? Okay, so instead of, right, so all of this, let's add everywhere this particular thing. So in first one is addition, second one is subtraction, right? So subtraction of A and B, right? So and then multiplication, right? So multiplication of A and B, right? So and then division of A and B, right? And then modulus of A and B is C. Okay, now let's just simply execute this. So now it will make some more so sense, right? So let's execute this. So now so we can see all of that in a clear manner, right? So addition of 5 and 3 is 8, subtraction of 5 and 3 is 2, multiplication of 5 and 3 is 15, division of 5 and 3 is 1, right? So modulus of modules I have given, right? So modulus of 5 and 3 is 2. Is it clear? Which is relational operators, right? So what does these relational operators do? Okay, so these relational operators, right, so will give you the Boolean output. Okay, what does they do? They'll give you the Boolean output, right? So what do we have in Boolean? Tell me, guys. What do we have in Boolean? What is the what does
false.
Yeah, what does the Boolean contains? Either true or false. Okay, so when you are using a Boolean, right, so when you are using relational operators between any two expressions, okay, between any two expressions, okay, expression 1 or expression 2, okay, if you are using them between any two expressions, or maybe let's not consider them as expressions, let's consider them as variables or integers or whatever it could be. If you are using two variables, right, so and right, so variables A, right, so B, something like this. Okay, so now what happens is that, right, so if you are using any of the relational operators between this A and B, so the output that you will get, right, so is always either true or false. So that's what this relational operators so always does. Okay, so now in A we have 5 and in B we have 3, say for example. So then what will happen, right? So A less than B, right? So these are all the operators that we have, right? The first one is less than operator, right? So what does less than operator will do, right? It will compare, right? It will compare, it will relate both of them. Okay, it will compare A with B and it will check if whether A is less than or B. Okay, so what it will do, it will check whether A is less than or B, right? So in our case, is A less than B? Is 5 less than 3? Guys, please speak out. Is 5 less than 3?
No.
No.
False.
Then what would be the output here, right? So the output you get is false. Okay, so what is that, right? So it's a Boolean output, right? So and then what's next, right? So next one is less than or equals to. Okay, so A less than or equals to B, right? So now tell me, right? So is 5 less than or equals to 3? What does this less than or equals to, right? So if 5 less than or equals to 3, false, right? So what does that less than or equals to 3, right? So say for example, right, so you have so 3 in you have a value of 3 in A and you have a value of 3 in B. Okay, so now is A less than B? Is 3 less than 3? Tell me, is 3 less than 3? No, right? Both of them are equal, right? So now the output that you'll get is false, right? So is 3 less than or equals to 3?
True.
Yes, now you'll get true. Why? Because 3, I mean, like, so that is what it will check, right? So either, so is, I mean, like, either 3, I mean, like, either A should be less than B or it should be equal to B. Okay, so that's what this less than or equals to checks, right? So in this case, what will happen, right? So 3 is not less than 3, but 3 is equals to 3, right? So right, so then for that reason it will come, the output will be true. Okay, either of the cases, right? If this is satisfying either of these cases, right? So either less than or equals to, then so the output will be true, right? So that's what it is. But in our case, so in the first case, so what is it, right? So since we have so the value of A as 5 and the value of B as 3, right? So the output is false, right? So in our case, the output is false. Okay, right? So and then what's next, right? So the next one is greater than. Okay, so is 5 greater than 3? Is 5 greater than 3? Is greater than true, right? So 5 is greater than 3. So this A, right? So this greater than symbol, what it will do, right? It will compare both A and B, right? So it will relate both A and B, and right, if A is greater than B, it will give us the output as true. Okay, so and then A greater than or equals to B, right? So is it true or false? Is it true or false?
False.
5 3 కన్నా పెద్దదా కాదా? Is 5 greater than 3 or not? Right? It's greater than 3, man. Greater than or equals to, what does this greater than or equals to, I mean like equals to does, right? So it will check, right? So whether this A is greater than B or not, right? So, and at the same time, even if the A is equals to B, it'll so accepts it. Okay. So in our case, 5 is greater than 3, right? So if I'm having 5 as B and 5, I mean 5 as A and 5 as B, even in that case also, it will come as true. Why? Because, right? So 5 is equals to 5, right? So that's what this equals to is all about. Okay. So, and then double equals to, what does this double equals to does, right? So double equals to check whether both of them are equal or not. Okay. So whether both expressions, whether both variables are equal or not, right? So A double equals to B. So is A equals to B? Is 5 equals to 3? No, right? Right. So in that case, what will be the output? Right. So the output would be false. Okay. So double equals to means what? Right. So it is a comparison operator, which is comparing both A and B. Right. So if both of them are equal, then it will give us true. If both of them are not equal, it will give the output as false. Okay. So, and then the last one is not. Okay. So, or I mean like, so not, right. So we call it as not, right. So what does this not generally do? Right. So or not equals to, let's not call this as not, right? So let's call it as not equals to. Okay. So what does this not equals to, right? So this not equals to can be represented using this symbol, or this can be represented using this symbol as well. Okay. Not equals to, right? So in some programming languages, this is what they'll use. Right. In some programming languages, right? So this is so the operator that they use, right? So in Apex, this is the operator that we mostly use. Okay. So now A not equals to B. Is that true or false? A not equals to B. Is 5 not equals to 3? That's true, right? 5 is not equals to 3, right? So then the output would be true, right? So this double equals to means it will check whether both of them are equal or not. This not equals to means it will check whether both of them are not equal or not. Okay. So here it will check equals, here it will check not equals. If they are if both of them are equal, then it will give the output as true. If both of them are not equal, then right, this operator will give us the output as true. Few examples for this, right, for the relational operators, right? So the same thing we can see. Right. So they can be of anything, guys. So they don't need to be, so numbers. They can be of strings. They can be of any other type of data as well. But they should be, some kind of variables, right? So where that comparison can happen. Okay. So that relational, so comparison can happen. So we can use all of those type of, so variables in the comparison. Okay. So not just integers. Okay. But we are checking only with integers. Why? Because it is easy to understand. But we can check with any other type of variables as well, right? So we can check with strings as well. If you look at string, what will happen, right? If you have string 1 and string 2, if both of them are equal or not, if you want to check, then you can use double equals to operator. Okay. So but you cannot use other operators on strings. Equals to is something you can use. Not equals to something you can use, but greater than, less than, and all other operators you cannot use. So that way, so different so data types of different type of variables, so can use different type of operators. But mostly, so all the operators can be used on integers. Okay. So all the relational operators can be used on integers, right? So that is the reason why I've taken the example of what. So this integer thing. Okay. So now let me just simply copy this integer A equals to 5, integer B equals to 3. So now what is the first one? Let's check with equals to operator, right? Is A greater than B, right? True or false? True or false, right? So what I'll do is Boolean result, right? So what would be the output that we'll get? Boolean output, right? So for that reason, I'm storing the output that we are getting into a variable named result, right? So result is a variable which is of type Boolean, right? So what is the value that we are going to store in it, right? So A less than B. Okay. So this is the value that we are trying to store in it. But if you clearly observe this is also an expression, right? Like how this is an expression, like how this is an expression. So this is also an expression. Okay. So now what will be the result, right? So if I just simply print it out, what will be the result? Tell me guys, what would be the result?
False.
Yes, false, right? The same way. So now what I'll do is, right? So since I have already declared this variable, right? So I don't need to use my data type once again. Okay. So if you are using the data type once again, then what will happen, right? So it will consider that as another variable altogether. Okay. So then what it will say, boss, there is already a variable created with the name of result. Why the hell you are trying to create one more variable with the same name? That's what it will ask, right? For that reason, right? So you don't need to so declare that variable again and again. Since the variable is already declared, you can use that variable wherever you want to use it, right? So you don't need to declare it with the data type that you have for that particular variable. So whenever you are using that variable, so if you're doing that, it will consider that as a new variable altogether. Okay. So that is the reason why what happened, right? So at the time of declaration, I have done integer c equals to a plus b. But after that, what happened? Every time when I'm trying to use c, I just simply use c equals to C equals to C equals to and all of that. So why I have done that? Why? Because this variable is already declared. For that reason, I can use this variable wherever I want to use it, right? So that's what we are doing here as well, right? So this result is already declared, right? So this result variable is already declared. But now, if I want to change anything, I can change the value that is there in that result whenever I want to change it. But the only value that you can add to this result is Boolean value, either true or false, you can add it to it. Otherwise, apart from that, you cannot add any other values into it. If you are trying to, so do some kind of calculation, right? A plus B or something like that, right? So, and if you are trying to, so place that into this result, then what will happen is that it will not, execute that line of code. Why? Why? Because the result that, the output that you are getting out of this A plus B is integer, right? 5 plus 3 is 8, right? So, but you are trying to store only Boolean value into it, right? If you are trying to store, right, so integer value into a Boolean variable, what will happen, right? It will not allow you to do that, right? It will just simply stop doing this, right? That's what, this is all about. So please make sure that for that reason, always, whatever type of variable that you are creating, try to store the same type of data, into that variable. Otherwise, it will not allow you to do that. So let me try doing it. So let me try print this, right? So into this result, right? Into this Boolean variable, what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to assign what value, right? Integer value, right? So now see, it will throw some error, right? Illegal assignment. You are doing some illegal activity here. That is what it is saying, right? Illegal activity is going on. That's why it is saying that illegal assignment is not possible. Okay, right? So now let's go back to the business, right? So we are discussing operators, right? So now let's, so bring the other operators as well, right? A greater than or equals to B, right? So, and what's next, right? So result equals to what all things we have, guys, right? A less than B. Okay, what more we have? A, tell me guys, what more we have? This is less than. Okay, so and then what's next? Less than or equals, greater than equals. This is less than. Okay, so and then less than equals, right? If you want less than equals, what should we do? A less than equals B. Okay, so and after that, what's next? Greater than equals also we have already seen. Okay, so what's next? Tell me guys, what's next?
Then equal.
Greater than equals, less than equals, and what's
Not
next?
equals.
Double equals. Okay,
Yeah.
double equals, right? So you can call this as double equals as well. And what's next? Not equals.
Not.
Okay, so A not equals to, see, whenever so yeah, but let's quickly see this, right? So what will happen, right? So double equals, and then last one is not equals, right? So now let's execute all of this and see what will be the output. So what it is saying at line 93, At line
No
93,
chain of expression.
at line 93, right? So there is an issue. That is what it is saying. Where is line 93? Yes, there is
Yeah.
no semicolon here. Okay, so that's the reason why it is saying like that. Okay, so now let's just simply print it out and see what would be the output. See, first one is true. What is that first one? What is the first one that we have here? Right? So A greater than B, right? So that's true, right? So and after that, A greater than or equals to B, right? So that is also true, right? So A less than B, that is also, that's a false, right? A less than or equals to B, that's a false, right? So A equals to B, right? So that is also false, right? So is 5 equals to 3? No, right? So A not equals to B, 5 not equals to 3. Yes, that's right, right? So that's the reason why we got true. Okay. So is it clear, guys? Is it clear with all the relational operators? But
Yes.
what is, yeah, so what is the output that we generally get through the relational operators? Boolean, right? So you'll always get Boolean type of output. So, and then, so next goes to logical operators. Okay. So what does this logical operators do, right? So we have 3 types of logical operators, guys, right? Avi enti ani ante and, or, and not. Okay. So and ki manam vaade symbol enti ani ante idi, right? Or ki manam vaade symbol ఏంటంటే రెండు నిలువు, I mean, like, you know, so two you know, so horizontal lines, right? 2 vertical lines, right? For not, you'll use exclamatory mark. Okay. So for and, right, you know, so we have 3 types of you know, logical operators. They are and, or, and not, right? So for and, so you'll use 2 ampersand symbols, right? So to denote and, we'll use 2 ampersand symbols, right? So to denote r, we'll use 2 vertical lines. To denote not, we'll use 1 exclamatory mark. So now let's see what does this and, or, and not you know, operators does. Okay. So what these operators does is, right, you know, they will take 2 expressions. Okay. 2 Boolean expressions. What does they take? Now do 2 or 3, whatever it could be, right? So they'll take Boolean expressions. Okay. So if you have 2 Boolean expressions, expression 1 and expression 2. Okay. So another expression 2, right? So then what it will do is, right? So if you're using and between both of those Boolean expressions, then what it will do is it will check, right? So what is the output of this expression 1? If this is true and if this is false, right? So then what it will do is, right? So it will give the output as false. Okay. So generally what this and will do is, only if both of them are true, then only it will give the output as true, right? If both of them are not true, then it will give the output as false, right? So only if both of them are true, it will give the output as true. If both of the expressions are not true, it will give the output as false, right? So that's what this and is all about. Okay. So but it will take only Boolean expressions to compare. Okay. Boolean expressions to give the output result, right? So that means expression 1, right? So this is what it is, right? So expression 2, right? So please keep this in mind, expression 1 and expression 2, right? So only if both of them are true, this is something you have to keep in mind. Only if both expressions are true, right? So then the output that you will get is true. Okay. The output that you will get is true. Otherwise, you know, so the output that you will get is false, always false. Okay. So now let's quickly look into this, right? So, and that is what I've told you, right? So now you have 2 expressions. Okay. So one is, right? So now you have 2 expressions. One is expression A and the other one is expression B. Okay. So, and the output 1, right? So if you're using AND operator, right? So what is that? A and B. Okay. So then what will happen is that, right? If A is false and B is false, then the output is false. If A is false, B is true, then the output is false. If A is true, B is false, then the output is false. Only if A and B are true, then the output is true. Okay. So that's what, right, you know, this AND is all about, right? You know, this is something you guys have to keep in mind, right? So now let's quickly look into some of the examples. Yeah, yes. If both the expressions are true, then only the output that you'll get is true. Otherwise, the output that you'll get is false. Okay, so this is something you guys have to keep in mind. So now let's quickly, so look at one of the examples. Okay, so say for example, right? So you went to an ATM. Okay, you went to an ATM, right? So generally, what will happen in ATM, right? So if you want to withdraw any amount, so what it will do, right? Amount in your bank. First, it will check what? Amount in bank. How much amount you have, right? So now let's call this as integer. Okay, say for example, you have 1,000 rupees. Okay, so and then, so generally what happens, right? If you want to withdraw some 500 rupees, so how can you do that, right? So since you have 1,000 rupees, you can withdraw it. Is that right or wrong? Is that right or wrong? Tell me, guys. Okay, so now what you are trying to do is, right, you are trying to withdraw some amount. Okay, so now let's call it like this. Okay, so now withdraw amount or something like that, right? How much amount you want to withdraw? You want to withdraw 500 rupees. Okay, so this is also integer. Okay, so now let's so have one more so integer, right? And that, let's call that integer as, right, so daily withdraw limit. Okay, so daily, what is it? Withdraw limit. So you'll have this, right? So withdraw limit, is it right or wrong? So if you go to any ATM, right, you'll have daily withdrawal limit as well, right? So if you consider any bank, right, you'll have some withdrawal limit, right? Say for example, the withdrawal limit that you have is what? So 800 rupees or something like that. Okay, so in a day you have to withdraw only, not in a day, right? So the maximum amount that you can withdraw in a single transaction is 800 rupees, say for example. Okay, so then what will happen, right? If you're trying to withdraw 500 rupees, will you be able to withdraw or not? Tell me, please. Will you be able to withdraw or not? Forget about all of this. Just look at this. Okay, so you have 1,000 rupees in your bank account. You want to withdraw 500 rupees, right? So the daily, not daily. So the maximum withdrawal limit is what? So maximum withdrawal limit is 800 rupees, right? You cannot withdraw more than 800 rupees at a single, in a single transaction, right? So in that case, right? So can you withdraw that amount or not? 500 or not? Tell me. Withdraw chase coach, right? So that is what it is, right? So if you are trying to withdraw, right, so 900 rupees, so then what will happen?
False.
Will it so let you withdraw that amount?
Not
possible.
possible.
Not possible.
Not possible.
Okay, so now let's create one more variable. Let's call this as boolean, right? So boolean variable can withdraw. Okay, what does this tell? So this variable will tell us whether we can withdraw or not. That's it. Okay, so now what we have to do is, right, based on these values that are there in, so here, right, so into all of this, right, so what we have to do is, right, so we have to populate this value, whether we can withdraw the amount or not, whether that is possible or not possible. That is what we have to do. So if we are changing some values here, right, into this withdrawal amount, so it should always give us, right, so the right output. Okay, so now let's try to use these end operators, end logical operators, and try to populate this, right? So we can do that with the help of this end operator, right? So now let's quickly see this. Okay, so now so దీన్ని ఏం చేస్తానంటే, what I will do is, right, so I will so make this right, variables short. Okay, so I will call this as AIB. Okay, so I will call this as WA, withdrawal amount. I will call this as WL. Okay, so is that fine, guys? Can we call it like that? Can we do it?
Yes, sir.
AIB, right? So this one is AIB, this one is WA, this one is WL, right? So let's call this as CD. CD means cash, so can withdraw. Okay, so now what should we do? Tell me. What should we do? Right? That's it, right? So can withdraw. Okay, so can withdraw, right, or CD, whatever it is, right? So can withdraw, right? So equals to, what will happen, right? So amount in bank right? Amount in bank, right? So sorry. So there are few conditions that we have to think of, right? You should never try to withdraw more than whatever that is there in our account, right? So if you are trying to withdraw, so 1900 rupees, will that be possible? No, right? So now in that case, what all conditions we have to check, right? So what all conditions that we have to check? Tell me. Tell me. Amount in bank, you should always, right? So withdrawal amount should always less than, tell me what should be that, right? So withdrawal amount,
900.
yeah, withdrawal amount should always less than amount in bank, right? So withdrawal amount, WA, should always what? Less than or equals to amount in bank. Okay, right? So this should always come as true, right? So then only you can withdraw, right? Otherwise you cannot withdraw it. And what's next? What is that you can do? What is that you can do? Tell me. And what is the condition, right? That we have to think of, the other condition. Withdrawal amount should always less than amount in bank, and at the same time, right, withdrawal amount should always less than withdrawal limit as well. Withdrawal limit as well, right? So withdrawal amount should always less than or equals to, we can keep it equals to as well, right? Equals to what? Withdrawal limit. So then only you can withdraw, otherwise you cannot withdraw, right? So that means, right? So now tell me, right? So now, so based on whatever values that we are adding here, now tell me, right? So in this case, 1000, 1900 and 800. So in this case, what will happen? What will be the output? What is the output of this? So withdrawal amount less than or equals to available amount in bank, AAB. Tell me, guys.
False.
AIB. Why? Because, right? So 1900 is less than or equals to 1000. Idemaitundi, right? So false, right? So false, right? So and inkokati em vachindi ikkada? What is the other thing? Right? So is right? So is 1900 less than or equals to 800? Idi kuda false, right? False and false. What is the output? False. Only if both of them are true, then only so this can become true, right? So that's what that's how we use AND. Okay, that's how we use AND. But here this is one expression. Okay, this is one expression. Expression means what? It is evaluating to a single value, and these expressions should always the Boolean expressions. Why? Because the output that you will get out of this AND, OR, and NOT is always Boolean. So for that reason, right, so the expressions that you are using here also should be Boolean. Okay, so in this case, what is this? This is also a Boolean, right? So the output that you are getting is Boolean. Here also the output that you are getting is Boolean, right? And the overall output that you are getting is also a Boolean. Okay, so that's what it is, right? The logical operators are always used between Booleans, right? So this is something you guys have to keep in mind. Okay, Ardhamainda, or you want me to explain this in Telugu once, right? So let me explain it in Telugu once, right? So manaki ikkada 4 variables create చేసుకున్నారు అబ్బాయి, రైట్? ఒకటి అమౌంట్ ఇన్ బ్యాంక్ అని ఒక వేరియబుల్, విత్డ్రాల్ అమౌంట్ అని చెప్పి విత్డ్రా అమౌంట్ అని ఒక వేరియబుల్, విత్డ్రాల్ లిమిట్ అని ఒక వేరియబుల్ క్రియేట్ చేసుకున్నాం, రైట్? సో మనం బ్యాంక్ లో నుంచి మన ఏటీఎంకి వెళ్ళి మనం డబ్బులు విత్డ్రా చేయగలుగుతామా లేదా అన్నది దేని మీద డిపెండ్ అయి ఉంటుంది? మనకి 2 కండిషన్స్ మీద డిపెండ్ అయి ఉంటుంది మేజర్గా. ఆ 2 కండిషన్స్ ఏంటి? నువ్వు విత్డ్రా చేస్తున్న అమౌంట్ ఎప్పుడు కూడా నీ బ్యాంక్లో ఉన్నదానికన్నా తక్కువే విత్డ్రా చేస్తూ ఉండాలి. అండ్ ఇంకొకటి ఏంటి? నువ్వు విత్డ్రా చేస్తున్న అమౌంట్ కూడా విత్డ్రాల్ అమౌంట్ అంటే ట్రాన్సాక్షన్ లిమిట్ ఎంత అవుతుందో ఆ లిమిట్ కన్నా తక్కువే నువ్వు విత్డ్రా చేస్తూ ఉండాలి. ఆ 2 నీకు ఎప్పుడైతే సాటిస్ఫై అవుతాయో అప్పుడే నీకు డబ్బులు వస్తాయి. అవునా కదా? ఇస్ దట్ రైట్ ఆర్ రాంగ్? Is that right or wrong? So that is what we are doing here, right? So first ఏం చేసాం, రైట్? విత్ అమౌంట్ విత్డ్రాల్ అమౌంట్ బ్యాంక్ లో ఉన్న డబ్బుల కన్నా తక్కువ ఉందా లేదా, రైట్? సో ఎస్, తక్కువ ఉంది. తక్కువ ఉందా లేదా ఫస్ట్ చెక్ చేసుకుంటున్నాం. దాంతోపాటు ఇంకోటి ఏం చెక్ చేస్తున్నాం, అండ్ వాట్? ఆ విత్డ్రాల్ అమౌంట్ విత్డ్రాల్ లిమిట్ కన్నా కూడా తక్కువ ఉండాలి. ఆ 2 కండిషన్స్ ఎప్పుడైతే సాటిస్ఫై అవుతాయో అప్పుడే నువ్వు డబ్బులు విత్డ్రా చేసుకోగలుగుతావు. ఈ కేసులో 2 కాదు, రైట్? సో నౌ లెట్స్ ట్రై టు డూ సంథింగ్ డిఫరెంట్, రైట్? సో నౌ లెట్ మీ రిమూవ్ దిస్ 1. Okay, so now tell me what will happen here, right? Chapani, what will happen here in this case? Now I have removed this, I mean like 1, before this 900, right? So 1900, right? So now what happened? That this became 900, right? So is 900 less than 1000? Is 900 less than 1000? True, right? Is it right or wrong, guys?
True.
It's true, right? So this is true, right? So this is true. But how about this one, right? So is 900 less than 800? It's false. Can you withdraw? No, you cannot.
False.
Okay. Why? Because so limit you are trying to withdraw, so more than whatever is whatever limit is that whatever limit that is available, right? So that means that is not possible. Okay. So now let's to try to change this number, right, to 500. Okay. So in that case, what will happen? Tell me. In that case, what will happen? Right. So this is true.
False.
1000 is less than 500 is less than 1000, and this 500 is less than this 800 as well. Okay. So daily limit karna kuda takku undi, and at the same time it is less than what? The amount in bank as well, right? So whatever amount that is there in bank as well, right? That means you can withdraw, right? Means that the output that you'll get is true, right? So this is not false, right? I mean, this is also true. So the output that you'll get is true. Okay. So you can withdraw. Okay. So in these cases, right? So for these kind of scenarios, what we'll do, we use and, right? If we are using and, so both the conditions must be true, both the Boolean expressions, right? So must be true, then only, so the output that you'll get is true, right? So these things we have already used in validation rules and all of that, if you guys remember, right? So now let's go to OR, right? So what will happen in OR, right? So that it's, I mean, like it's same as AND, right? So but there is a small difference, right? So what will happen is that, right? So if you have two expressions, right, A and B, sorry, A and B, right? So if either of these expressions is true, okay, if either of these expressions is true, okay, if either of these expressions is true, so then what will happen? Then what will happen if either of these expressions is true? The output that you'll get is true. Okay. So that means what will happen now? Let's quickly see this, right? So if A is false and B is false, what would be the output? False, right? So A is false and B is true. What would be the output? True. Why? Because, right? So B is true, right? So if in both the expressions, even at least one expression is true, then the output will become as true. Okay. That's what OR is all about. Okay. So A and B, right? So A or B. So, right. So if either of this is true, then either of this is true, then the output is true, right? So now true and false, right? So you have true in A and false in B, then what would be the output, right? So true is the output, right? So if you have both truths, then what would be the output, right? So true is the output. So only if both of them are false, then only you'll get false. Otherwise, always you'll get the output as true. Is it clear, guys? Can we see any example for this as well? Can we see any example for this as well? So there is a child. Let's consider, like, there is a child, right? So now, child has, completed his homework. Okay. So completed his homework, right? So now he want to go and play outside. Okay. So in the ground, he want to go and play. Okay. Play where? Play outside of the house somewhere. Okay. So then, right, so we should allow him only when should we allow him, right? So we should allow him only if there is any parent available. He has both mom and dad. Okay. So if either dad or mom is available, then what can we do? We can allow him to play outside, right? That is what our requirement. So child has to complete his homework, and if his mom or dad is available, then he can go and play outside. Okay. Otherwise, he shouldn't be going and so he should not be able to go and play outside. Okay. So now let's quickly see this. Okay. So now, right. So now let's so store all of those three into three different variables. Okay. Homework completed. Okay. Is he completed or not? Right. So I mean, like, so homework completed, right? So if this is the variable, so what, I mean, like, what type of, so data that this variable is going to store? What should be the data type of this variable? Tell me. Homework completed. What should be the
String.
homework completed? Output. What will be the output? Just tell me output. What will be the output? Homework complete అయిందా లేదా అంటే అవుట్పుట్ ఏమొస్తుందిరా? చేసాడు లేదా చేయలేదు. True or false? Then what is it, right? So the value that you'll be having is true or false, right? So that means it should be Boolean. Okay, Boolean. Okay, Boolean homework completed equals to true, say for example. Okay, so he completed the homework, right? So and then mom available, okay, or dad available, right? So mom available, right? So now tell me, so what kind of so data that we are going to store in this? What kind of data that we are going to store in this? Mom available, dad available. Boolean, right? So Boolean. Okay, this is also true, this is false. Say for example, this is false. Okay, so now what you want to do is, right, so can play outside, right? So we want to check whether he can play outside or not. Okay, so now what would so what would be the output, right? So this will also come, this will also this is also should be either true or false, right? So that means this is also a Boolean. So what should be the value in it? Tell me, what should be the value in it? Okay, so what is that we have to check, right? So what is that we have to check? Homework completed, that should be always true or false, right? So now tell me, right? So now let me just simply keep this as, let me make this short. Okay, HWC, homework completed. So mom available means, right? So MA, dad available means, right? DA, right? So I'm just simply taking shortcuts of it. Okay, so now can he play outside, right? So what should we do in that case? What should be? HWC should be true, right? And what should happen? And either of them should be available. Is it right or wrong? Okay, MA or DA, right? So then only he can go and play outside. Okay, so MA or DA means what? So if either of them are, if either of them is true, then so the output would be true, right? So otherwise it will be false. But here in our case, what is it, right? So mom is available, even though dad is not available, mom is available, right? How about homework completed? Does he completed his homework? Yes, he completed his homework. So then what will happen, right? Since both of them are true and true, right? What will happen? The output would be true. Okay, that means he can go and play outside. Okay, so that's how we use OR, right? So wherever you are using OR, right, it will check for both the conditions, and if either of the condition is true, right, or either of the expression is true, so then the output is true. Okay, so now let's try to change this. Okay, so now let me try to change this to false. Okay, so mom is also not available, but this child has completed his homework. So now tell me what will be the output. Now tell me what will be the output. Homework completed. Is that right or wrong? So then it's true. And what about this one? What about this one? Mom is available. This is false. Dad is available. This is false. Right? So since both of them are false, the output is false. Right? So true and false. Whenever there is an end, both of them should be true in order to become as a true. So then the output is false. That means this child cannot go and play outside. Okay? Is it clear, guys? Is it clear what this logical operators, so how OR operator works? Is it clear? Okay, so and then the last operator is not operator, right? So what does this not operator will do, right? So it will just simply take one input, right? So it will not take two expressions. It will take only one Boolean expression. Okay, it will take one Boolean expression, and what it will do is it will just simply reverse it. That's it. Okay, so if I have an expression, right? So if the expression is false, and if I'm just simply using not, right? So for that expression, then what will happen is that, right? So not of expression, then what will happen is that it will convert that into other thing, right? It will just simply convert it, right? So if it will just simply invert it. Okay, not convert it, it will just simply invert it, right? So if this expression is true, So then the output will become false, right? So, say for example, I have some variable like, B or something like that, right? So then what will happen, right? So if, so if my, I'm like, if the value that I have in A is true, then B will become false. Okay. So then if the value that I have in A is false, then, right, so B will become true. That's it. Okay. Is it clear? Right? If the expression that we are having is false, then the output is true. If the expression that we are having is true, then if you are using not of A, then the output would be false. So that's what this not is all about. Not will just simply invert whatever that is there in the existing expression. Okay. So that's what the logical operators is all about, guys. Okay. So, and the last one is, right, so incremental or decremental operators. Okay. So but before going that, so let's quickly look into this, right? So I'll not take more than 5 minutes. Okay. I'll try to complete this within next 5 minutes. Just give me some time. Okay. So, right. So now let's go back, right? So now resume it, right? Tell me, amount in bank. Okay. What is this, guys? Amount in bank, integer, right? So let's take the same example. Okay. The one that we have seen earlier. Let's take the same example and let's try to write it. Okay. So amount in bank. How much amount we have, right? So 1,000 rupees. Okay. What is this? This is an integer. Okay. So integer, right? So integer, what's next? Withdrawal amount. Okay. Withdrawal amount. How much we want to withdraw, right? So 500 rupees or something like that. So what is the withdrawal limit? Okay, what is the withdrawal limit? Say for example, withdrawal limit is so 800. You cannot withdraw more than 800 rupees in a single transaction. Okay, so now what will happen, right? So you want to withdraw 500 rupees and you have 1,000 rupees in your bank account and the withdrawal limit is 800. So that means you can do it, right? So now let's take one more thing. So Boolean can withdraw. Okay, so equals to what? Tell me, guys. Amount in bank. Tell me, amount in bank or withdrawal amount? Withdrawal amount. Tell me, withdrawal amount less than, should always be less than or equals to withdrawal limit. Okay. And what's next? And what's next?
Withdrawal amount.
Withdrawal amount. And this is what you have to use. Withdrawal amount should be less than amount in bank as well. Okay. You should never try to, so withdraw more than, whatever that is there in your bank account. Right. In bank account lo 1000 రూపాయలు ఉండి నువ్వు 1500 విత్డ్రా చేద్దాం అంటే అలో చేస్తుందా? చేయదు. రైట్. సో ఇప్పుడు నువ్వేం చేయాలి? నువ్వు విత్డ్రా చేయగలుగుతావా లేదన్నది ఏం డిసైడ్ చేస్తుంది? నువ్వు లిమిట్ కన్నా తక్కువ విత్డ్రా చేయాలి అండ్ నీ బ్యాంక్ అకౌంట్లో ఉన్నదానికన్నా తక్కువ డబ్బులు విత్డ్రా చేయాలి. రైట్. సో ఆ రెండు నువ్వు చేసేటప్పుడే, రైట్, ఇట్ విల్ అలౌ యూ టు withdraw. Right. So now let's try to so print this up, right? Now let's try to system.debug, right? So, right, what is it? Can withdraw. Okay. So now let me execute this and see what will happen. Right. So what will be the output? Tell me, guys. What is the output of this? Withdrawal amount is less than or equals to withdrawal limit. 500 is less than 800. This is true. Right. So how about this one? Right. So 500 is less than amount in bank. What is it? Right. So less than or equal to amount in bank. So 1,000. Right. So 500 is less than 1,000. Right. So that means both of them are true. True and true is always true. Right. So now let's execute this and see what would be the output. Right. So the output is true. Okay. So now let's look at some other example. Right. So the other example that what we have seen, guys, right? Integer. Tell me. Not integer. Okay. So Boolean, right? So Boolean homework done equals to true. Child homework is done. Right. So Boolean dad available Is dad available or not? Yes. False. Dad is not available. He's in office. Okay. So then what is it? Mom available. Is mom available? Yes. Mom is available. Right. So at home. Right. So then this is true. So now tell me. So can go and play outside. Right. Whether this kid can go and play outside. That is what we want to check. Can play outside. Okay. Tell me. Can play outside. Right. So what would be the output here? I mean, like, what is that we have to check? Homework done. So he should be completing his homework. Otherwise, he shouldn't be allowed to go and play outside. And then what's next? What's next? And either mom or dad should be available, right? So if either mom and dad should be available, in that case, we have to use or. Either means we have to use or, right? So dad available, right? So or mom available. Okay. So what would be the output of it, guys? What would be the output of so this can play, right? So can play outside.
True.
Right. So then it would be true, right? If you are changing the values in between, right? So with all of this, then what will happen? So these values also will change. Can withdraw and can play outside also will change, right? So this way, right? So we will generally, right? So use the relational, not relational, right? So logical operators, right? So, and there is one more thing called not, right? So not, right? So for that, what we have to do, right? Right. So you can just simply, so try to print that up and see what will happen. So not is an opposite of what? Whatever expression that you are giving here, right? That's it. Okay. So I'm just simply, so using not operator to, right. So convert whatever that is there in here, right? So if this is true, so then this will become false. Okay. So now let's try to execute this and see what will happen. Unexpected token. Where? At line 112.
Raise of the raise of
See, first one is true. He can withdraw amount. He can play outside. Then what we have done, we have just simply changed that to, I mean, like we have just simply inverted it, right? So using not operator. So what is the not operator? Not operator, right? So this is the not operator, right? So explanatory mark is the not operator. Okay. So that's what this logical operators is all about. And then last one is incremental and decremental operators. What are these incremental and decremental operators and where can we use them, right? So these incremental and decremental operators are generally used with integers, right? Say for example, if you have a is equals to 5, right? So if you are using, so incremental and decremental operators, right? So we'll have plus plus and minus minus. Okay. So if I'm so using incremental operator, right? So, and if I am just simply keeping it like this, then what will happen is that a plus plus means I'm just simply adding this operator to my variable, right? So my integer variable, which is 5. So then what will happen is that, so what does this mean is that, right? So a is equals to a plus 1. That is what this a plus plus means, right? So what it will do, it will increment whatever value that is there in this variable, right? So what is the value that we have in this variable? 5, right? So now if you are just simply, so putting it like a plus plus, then what is the output, right? So the output is a is equals to a plus 1. So that means what is it? So now a is equals to 5 plus 1, which is 6. Okay. So the same way we have minus minus as well. Okay. So a minus minus, if I am using this, then what is the output, right? So what does this equal to, right? So this means a equals to a minus 1, right? So what will happen, right? So then, so since we have 6 in a now, then what will happen, right? So a will become 6 minus 1, which is 5. Okay. Is it clear, guys? So minus minus means decrement, plus plus means increment. That's it. Okay. So either ways you can do it, right? So a is equals to a plus 1, you can keep it, right? Or a plus plus also right? So you can keep, right? If you want to just increment it by 1, you can keep, you can just simply, so express it like this, or you can just simply express it like this. Okay, either ways is correct. Okay, so that's what this plus plus is all about. Okay, so is it clear, guys? Is it clear? Now let's quickly look into that, right? So just simply go back, right? So now let me comment all of the previous code, right? So, and then just simply come down, right? So A is equals to, right? So what? 5, something like that I've kept, right? So now A plus plus, right? System dot debug, right? So A. Now let's see what will happen, right? So now the value that we'll have in A is what, right? So 6. Okay, so yeah, so now let's quickly see this. Variable does not exist here, right? So okay, sorry. So we have to declare this variable, right? So integer. Okay, so now let's execute this and see what will happen. Right, 6. See, A has become 6, right? 5 plus 1, 6, right? So the same way, right? So decrement, right? So integer B is equals to 50 or something like that. Right, now let me try to decrement it. System dot debug, right? So B minus minus. I'm directly, so keeping this B minus minus in the debug itself. Okay, so now let's try to execute this. Okay, so either you can directly bring the variables into here, or you can directly bring the expressions also into system.debug. So what is it? Right, expression or right, so that method, whatever it is, right? So system is a class, debug is a method, right? Like how we have this, math and everything were there, right? So right, so math is a class, mod is a method, right? So yesterday also we have seen something, right? So what is that, right? So date is a class, right? So new instance is a method. We'll see what these classes, methods and all of that, right? But for now, just simply leave it like this. Okay, this method is expecting this parameter, right? So just look at this, every method, right? This debug is a method, this is expecting a parameter, right? The same way, right? If you come here, right? So this math.mod is also a method, right? This is also expecting 2 parameters, right? If the same way, if you go here, right? So this date, right? So I mean, like in the date class, you have this new instance method. This method is also expecting some parameters. Generally, methods expect parameters, right? So either you can give the parameters or you don't give them, right? But still those methods will execute. But keep that all of aside for a moment. But just simply try to give this expression. I'm directly giving B minus minus here, right? Either I can keep B minus minus here, and then I can directly use B here, right, as a variable, or I can directly give the expression also here, right? It'll just print it out. That's it. It'll execute it and it'll print it out, right? Either ways is fine. So I just simply kept that expression out, and I've just, for our simple understanding, I just simply brought this B in here. Now see what will happen, right? So now B will become 49. Okay. So now let's do one thing. Increment it to, right? Since this is a string, right? So let's add it like this, incremented to A, right? Incremented to 6, right? Decremented to, right? So we are concatenating, right? So that's why we are adding plus here. Okay. So we are concatenating this variable with string, concatenating with, we are attaching it. Okay. That's what here happening, right? So now just simply execute it and see what will happen, right? So 5 will become 6, and that 50 will become 49. Okay, see, can you guys see this, right? So that's what this incremental and decremental operator is all about, right? So with this, we are done with operators, guys. So tomorrow we'll be discussing, so conditional statements.